Hi there, my name is Tammy Robinson of Wellness with Tammy Inc. And today I'd like to introduce you to my friend Vidya Ramachandran, who I met through the Origin membership with Kate Northrup. Now, Vidya's got a really brave story about feeling lost, frustrated, and like something was missing in her career and life. Less than 2 years into her PhD program, she realized she was on the wrong path. And she searched everywhere for the answers. Different jobs, different cities, different people, and none of it seemed to work. She had dug herself into a hole and didn't know how to get out of it until she got brave, she got quiet, and she mustered up the courage to look inside herself, her mind, and her body to find out what she really wanted. Now she helps ambitious women do the same. We covered a lot of ground, like how body awareness, yoga, and meditation practices helped her go inside to find her answers. What to do when you don't have any role models for what you're experiencing, and how to deal with the fear of disappointing others and of worrying about what others will think. And we covered so much more than that. So sit back, relax, and listen in as Vidya shares the tools that helped her go from being lost to finding her way back home to herself. And if this is something that you enjoyed, please feel free to hit that like button, subscribe, and then forward it on to whoever you think might benefit from hearing Vidya's story. Thanks so much. So, our first question for you, Vidya, is what has your relationship been to yoga, meditation, and self-awareness practices?
Yes, this is such an interesting question because for me, I feel like there's been 3 distinct phases in my life. So starting as a child, my family and I would go, like my mom, my sister, and I would go to India every other summer for the whole summer. And so I'd learned or absorbed just from my family and my cousins who were doing yoga and meditation practices. Like I learned basic yoga practices, Surya Namaskaram, like just the meditation and stillness. That just became what I thought of like just part of being Indian or being Hindu, like part of my religious and cultural practices, just as classical dance was for me, and growing up and like learning Indian Carnatic music or prayer just became part of my like cultural identity. And then when I was in my early 30s, that shifted because just some things that happened in life. I had left my job to go into a PhD program, and 2 years in realized it was not the right fit for me. So I was going through a lot of change of like, what is it that I am supposed to be doing? What is my next step? And I had gone back into a corporate environment, but within a few months really knew that that's not where I was supposed to be. And so it was around the time that I first became aware of what personal development was and started taking some, signing up for some programs in that area, and started to bring back in meditation and yoga, but more as a coping mechanism, because I just was so lost in what I was, what am I supposed to be doing? Where am I supposed to be living? Like, what was the meaning? What was my purpose, and what was my mission with my life, and what was my path supposed to be? And so that was where it really came to the forefront again. I remember distinctly in like 2012, just really starting to rely on these practices as, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need some way to cope with this. And these are 2 of the practices that I used for that. And then I would say the third phase is more of like the last 4 to 5 years of my life, where as I've been deepening into my own mission and the mission for my work of just supporting other women and reigniting their spark and becoming our most unapologetically expressive and vital and free creative selves, it's been a big part of that has been body connection and connecting to our body's wisdom. And so that connecting and accessing it, of our what our body is telling us and our connection to our body is just so foundational to really igniting our spark, or reigniting and reclaiming our spark and stepping into who we're supposed to be unapologetically. That yoga and meditation and stillness practices have just really helped me connect much more deeply with my own body and with my emotions. And it's now kind of circled back into a more spiritual practice, I would say.
So there's a real story arc there, almost, with it being just part of who you were growing up, to it becoming a vital coping practice, to it then becoming really a vital key to what your purpose is.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice. I love it. Oh my goodness. And so how, you kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but I'm curious if you could say a little bit more about how you came to realize that the path you were on wasn't for you whenever you left your PhD program and had this big shift in your life. What was that like? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that it started much earlier than that. So I would say the one thing that was very clear when I was younger is I did not want to be a doctor, but I didn't know what I was that I wanted to do. And so I think there were just a lot of subconscious, subtle messages I had absorbed from society and from cultural, familial things that I was seeing. No one actually told me, oh, you have to be a scientist, or you have to be this, or you have to be that. But I thought, okay, this is the path I was supposed to take. And so I actually have an undergraduate degree in science and chemistry, and very quickly realized like that is not something that is a fit for me. And so that started this pattern of okay, this doesn't quite work, so let me try this other thing. Or this city doesn't quite fit for me, like, let me try moving somewhere else. And so, it was always almost like searching for the next thing, or the place where I would find my community, or this is where I'm meant to be. And I think especially when I had put so many eggs in this, PhD program basket, thinking that I have finally found what it is I'm meant to be doing with my life. And I'm going to be inspiring and impacting all of these young minds. And very quickly realizing, like within 16 months, realizing like this was not at all a fit, and all the color had kind of leached out of my life. And I felt like I dug myself into a hole and I didn't know how to get out of it. And so what I realized is, across all of these experiences, looking back, now it's not something that I've realized in the moment, it took a lot of retrospective reflection, is that I never actually sat down and checked in with myself. What is it that I wanted to do? I think the challenge was, or the reason I was just having a lot of struggle finding my path, is because I was taking a lot of external stimuli. Like I would see somebody doing something else, or I would have a vague idea of what something was, but not really checking in with myself to say, what is it that I truly, really, truly desire? What is it that I truly want to be impacting?
Yeah, I love that, because you really hit upon one of the key principles of yoga, not just postures, but the full practice of yoga, which is that all of it is designed to take us inside instead of relying on everything outside. And so it took you some time to figure that out. But once you started doing that, that's when the answer started clicking into place for you.
Yes, exactly.
Love it. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in trying to change directions?
I would say it was, again, I think the sitting in silence piece. I think for me, not, let me rephrase, the not sitting in silence and not sitting with it piece. Because I think one of the things that I struggled with is, well, one, I wasn't really like in my family cultural, like family community unit. There weren't a lot of people I knew who were doing something very different from what was, what the norms are. And so I really didn't have I think a clear understanding of like what the possibilities were from people who I knew in a day-to-day, type of day-to-day type of relationship. Does that even make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So you didn't have any role models, it sounds
Role
like,
models. Yeah.
of doing something different than what was typically expected.
Yes, exactly. And then when I started connecting with people and being like, oh, this is a potential possibility, I think there was still a lot of my absorbed just cultural and societal norms saying like, yeah, that might have worked for them, but your situation it's not right for your situation. Mm-hmm. And so, which is funny because I will say, I've had friends tell me, like, people I went to college with who I've kept in touch with here and there, like tell me that, and some family members, that I really have inspired them, because when I know something is wrong, or something's not a fit, I will make a change and try something new. But from my side of it, is just one of the big challenges was, okay, I'm going to disappoint somebody, or how do I turn this, what might have been a failed step, into something that I can talk about, or something that doesn't look like I want to just put my head under the covers and forget I ever tried that or did that. And so there again, it's a lot of external, like what is it that someone might say, or how might I be seen, or who might I be disappointing if I try this thing, or if I say I want to do this thing. And so I think it took me a while to really recognize that, what, at the end of the day, I gotta be me, and I have to, like, I really need to go after what I want, and also not protect myself perhaps, but really bring in the voices, like my friends and family members who are supportive and can kind of be that positive encouragement and touch point for me when I need to just kind of like not hear the other voices, the critical voices in my head.
Yeah. So I heard a few things in there. So one is a lack of role models. A second was this expectation that it's not okay to disappoint others. It's not okay or this sort of fear around what others will think.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the third piece was, again, like just looking at the externals as opposed to the internals, and going inside yourself. Yeah. And so
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you, please.
I was gonna say it's so interesting because it's just like such a common thread.
Mm-hmm.
That that's why I feel like, I think now that the whole body connection piece has just been so helpful for not just my own practice, but in the work itself, because it's foundational no matter what we're trying to do.
Yes, because without it, we end up perhaps maybe judging ourselves for things that we think others are going to judge us for. but maybe they're not, right?
Yeah.
And then the other piece I heard in there was also about finding a supportive community. So initially it sounded like maybe you didn't quite feel you had that supportive community, or maybe you weren't leaning on it. But once you were able to, then things started to shift for you.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, it's so interesting. I just wrote about this to in my newsletter that's going out this week. But when I was going through my entire emotional up and down and really like just steeping in misery, like a year and a half into my PhD program, it wasn't until I was talking to a friend of mine, and I just happened to like burst out in tears in the conversation. And then it all poured out, like, this is how it's going. Because I think part of it is like, until then, I know I had been talking to my friends, and I know they would have supported me if I had probably shared the challenges I was going through. And I think that was the other piece, is I don't remember sharing the challenges with the people who had gone, I had friends who were professors, and other friends who had done other things, who could have empathized and shared their experiences. And I knew some of their experiences, yet I think I was like, I need to figure this out. Or I would share it with people who weren't able to connect on it and really didn't know how to support me, even if they wanted to. And so it was I think that's why there's always, it's nice to have a community where there's people who can serve different roles for each other in different times. Because, I was going to my parents and sharing, but they really didn't know how to support me. Like, they also had not gone through the education system, the US. They came from India in the 70s. So it wasn't, they had no idea what the process would be, how I could get out of it. They just knew like I needed to get a job or do something, right? And so that's why I feel like community, if I had perhaps even started sharing, and I had friends at school who were also, and I think that's the other piece, like I had friends in grad school who are my year or ahead of me, who were going through similar things, but because they were going through similar things at the same time, they also were perhaps not the right people for me to get the support that I needed from, because they also needed support, right? And their experiences and mine going through it almost at the same time makes it challenging for us to have a very third-party neutral view.
Absolutely. So the challenge again being not just building a supportive community, but knowing who to go to for what.
Yes.
Yeah. Who can you share those deeper vulnerabilities with? Who's going to understand? Your parents, of course, are there for you, but like you said, they couldn't relate to the same experience that you had. So knowing who to go to for what. Yeah. So then what were some of the tools? And I know you started kind of hinting about this a little bit in terms of body connection work and things like that, but share a little bit about what some of the tools were that helped you through this, through this big change.
So I would say, especially in the last couple of years, it's been 10 years since I had, reconnected back to meditation in some form, even though back then I was using it more as a coping mechanism. And I do really think that just no matter how one practices meditation, just having those few moments of silence a day, at any point in the day, just connecting to that was really game-changing for me. Because it not only, even like my mom, I remember at one point she was like, I think this meditating is helping you, because she could see the slight change in my behavior, like my anxiety, I was always very quick to just get angry and frustrated. And so, especially because of all that uncertainty and, just feeling lost. So I really do find that the meditation piece was really helpful. From a, yoga, I started just doing that. It was just from a very, again, just really, it's so interesting because I've pretty much danced my entire life, but I never felt, I realize now looking back, I never was really connected to my body. And so with yoga or with even just like body sensing practices, or just like trying to feel how different emotions feel, where they, what is the sensation? Where am I feeling it in my body? I'm able to just feel my body, or like feel myself living in my body in such a different way than I did as a dancer, where it was more of a tool to help me do certain moves. Or even when I used to ice skate, like, it helped me to get me from this point in choreography to this point when it comes to dancing. But really, it's a very interesting feeling of just like even slowly feeling that part of your body, and just like holding when I do a yoga practice, just like holding the pose it's just a quiet way for me to just connect back.
Nice. So movement and body activities, I'll say, to include dance and yoga postures. So that movement, it sounds like it transitioned from being something that was more performative to something that was more mindful, meaningful, and taking you inward.
Yes.
As opposed to just getting from point A to point B, as you mentioned.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. And so connect the dots then. How did that help you through the change?
It allowed, for me, what I realized is it was just giving me the space.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It just, slowing down, and I'm bringing this a lot into my work now too, is that how can we just slow down and create more space so we can sit with what we're feeling and what we're going through before we try to even process it and try to fix it. Because I realized that, again, this week as I was writing my newsletter, I realized like that was the piece from 11 years ago or 11 and a half years ago, where I don't think I knew I was upset and miserable, but I don't think I really sat with it. I didn't, because I was automatically into, how do I solve this problem? How do I pull myself out of that hole? How do I make this experience sound okay when I go for a job interview? And really, as I started connecting more with my body, I started seeing a lot more just flow in a lot of different areas of my life, whether it's work or not, where I can just, take a breath and sit with it and allow my own self body to metabolize what I'm feeling, and really help me see like, okay, then what is the next step? Instead of just rushing straight into like, no, action fix mode or problem solving mode.
Right. Yeah. So when we're avoiding the uncomfortable feelings and we just start acting, it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what will stick. And most of the time it just slides off, right? It's like not a solution. And so slowing down, becoming more mindful, going inside more helps you create the space to really sit with what you were feeling, gain the wisdom it was there to give you, and then figure out what to do from a wiser, internally sourced place.
Yes, exactly. And I will also say, like, if you'd asked me 6 years ago, I would have told you I don't have an intuition. I'm not intuitive. And now, over the last several years, I'm realizing like, no, I mean, actually, a friend of mine just said recently, I think she said everybody has an intuition. It's just if we access it or not, or we like actually use it, right? And so I think that was it, like really connecting to my body and slowing down helped me realize that I had an intuition, or I am intuitive. I just needed that space to hear it or feel it, because for me it's a lot more like feeling based.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you feel it, then you're able to receive the message.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice. Awesome. So what would you suggest for someone else who feels like maybe the path that they're on isn't working for them, or maybe they're also feeling like something's not quite right and they can't put their finger on what it is? What would you recommend for them? What would be a good first step?
Yeah, so my first recommendation is always, because that's what I love doing now, is like talking about how do we recalibrate, because it's not that we have to completely jump from one thing to another, right? Where we have a true alignment self at some point, somewhere. It's just we're maybe a few steps away from it. And so we're recalibrating in a more gentle way. And the first step is body connection, which I'm sure your community is very well aware of. But I think when we're feeling that we are stuck and we don't know where to go, what action to take, we lose sight of the tools that we already even have or might know of. So, there's a few different things that I really like to work with my framework, with clients, and also for myself whenever I feel like I'm off track and I need to recalibrate. And it's both experiential based, and it's either just connecting to how something feels for you. So it might be, if you're seeking freedom, how does that feel for you? If you're seeking peace, like how does that feel for you? And it can be just a tiny exercise, but I feel like if we tune into what it is that we want and how does it feel for us in our bodies, then we can access that more. And then when that's when some of those ideas will come intuitively or serendipitously, where it's just like, okay, then maybe I can try this one step and then see where that goes. Also, why it's nice to have that space so that you can kind of take a step, sit with it, get the wisdom, like you were saying, and then that opens up what's the next step. But typically everything now, in the last at least like 6 months, since I shifted what I'm focusing on in my work, everything we do starts with body connection, some type of body connection exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really about creating the space to listen. And even if that means sitting with some discomfort, and then,
Yes.
and creating that space, not just mentally, but being in the body and trying to understand where that's coming up for you in the body, and then trying on a different way of being.
Yes.
Like once you've heard the message, okay, it's this, and it sits in my belly, or it sits in my heart or on my shoulders. Like, okay, so then what do you want instead? Or what would be, kind of, and feeling that in the body and seeing what that opens up. Is that kind of summarizing what you
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why also, like, I've been doing this starting these body connection workshops, because I think the more we can understand we're feeling in our body and we can develop the language for it, then when we are making decisions, we can use that feedback that we're getting from our bodies, right? Like the whole, just like, you get some piece of news and your body might clench or it might feel really expansive. Like that is your body telling you something. And so the more we're in tune, the more we can access that level of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. I love it. And so how can people find you? And what are the kinds of things that you offer? You said you work one-on-one with clients. So
So I am on Instagram. So you can catch me there. My username is vidya.r.warrior, WARRIER. And also my website is where a lot of my information is on the things that I offer. I have a lot of free resources there as well to just start dipping your toes into recalibrating and connecting to your inner spark. And that is vidyawarrior.com. And I love working with clients one-on-one. I love just connecting with other women and other people in general. So, I would love to just even have a conversation if any of this sounds really intriguing. You want to continue the conversation, happy to chat with anyone. But I do work with clients one-on-one. I also have workshops, like I said, my intro level body connection workshop, which will be on my website in a couple of weeks. But those are some of the ways that, and then on my website lists some of the other ways that some of the other services that I offer as well.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Vidya.
Thank you, Tammy.